Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We love getting requests from you guys, and one that popped up recently was you wanted to know more about happiness research, especially when it comes to things like marriage and having kids.
Yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today with one of the biggest surveys in America, the General Social Survey, or as the cool kids call it, the GSS.
The GSS.
The GSS, exactly.
Okay.
And this is the 2022 version, so it's pretty recent. And I gotta say, some of the stuff we found might really surprise you.
Yeah. I think the most striking thing that jumped out at me when I was looking at this data was that there's a huge difference in happiness levels between people who are married and people who aren't.
Like, how big are we talking?
30%.
Whoa.
A 30% gap. And that's after controlling for other factors like,
Right.
income level,
Right.
education, all this stuff.
So you're saying that even when you account for those things,
Yeah.
marriage is still the biggest factor?
It really seems to be the single most important predictor of happiness.
Wow, 30%. That's a huge gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest. It seems like we're always hearing about how marriage is outdated or how it can hold people back, especially for women. But this data seems to be saying something completely different.
Yeah, it really challenges some of those narratives, doesn't it?
It really does. So let's dig into this a little bit more.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
So their analysis revealed that, consistently, married people, and especially those with children, report higher levels of happiness.
Really?
I know, right? It's like,
That's not the narrative you usually hear these days.
no,
Yeah.
it's like the opposite.
Yeah.
But this data is suggesting that for a significant portion of the population, these sort of traditional markers of adulthood are actually linked to greater happiness.
Interesting. So like getting married, having kids.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this secret society of happy families.
Right. This silent majority.
Yeah, and no one's talking about it. So
So it's not just this one study, right?
no,
Yeah.
this finding actually aligns with other research too.
Okay, like what?
So there's this University of Chicago study, for example. They found a significant happiness gap between married and unmarried Americans.
Significant. How big are we talking?
30%.
Wow, 30%. That's huge.
Yeah, that's not something to just brush aside.
No, that's a big difference.
It really makes you think.
It does. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, what is it? Is it something inherent about marriage itself? Or is it something, I don't know, deeper, like about the relationships?
Yeah, the support systems.
The support that comes with it.
Those are great questions. I mean, I think it's probably a bit of both.
Okay.
Stable, supportive relationships, which often, are fostered within marriage and family structures, right? They provide a sense of belonging, security, purpose.
Right.
And all of those things can definitely contribute to feeling good, to feeling happy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, but let's break this down a little further, because the IFS study also looked at happiness levels by gender.
Ooh, okay, by gender. So we're getting even more specific.
Yes, and this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the story for women?
All right. So, for women between 18 and 55, married mothers were nearly twice as likely to report being very happy.
Wow, twice as likely.
Compared to unmarried, childless women.
Okay, so that's a pretty big difference.
Huge difference. What about unmarried mothers?
Yeah, where do they fall?
So they actually reported the lowest levels of happiness in the study.
Oh, wow.
Which, obviously this isn't to say that single mothers can't be happy.
Of course not.
But it raises questions.
Yeah, about the unique challenges they face.
Exactly.
The support systems, or lack thereof.
You think about the pressures, the economic realities.
Absolutely. It all plays a role.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit. What about the guys?
Yeah, what's the deal with the men?
Does this whole marriage and happiness connection hold true for them?
Good question.
Well, it does.
It does.
Yeah, but the numbers are slightly different.
Okay, how so?
So, married fathers are the happiest group.
Okay.
Followed by married men without children.
Interesting. So just being a husband, with or without kids,
seems to provide a happiness boost.
makes you think, doesn't it?
Right. But what about the unmarried men?
Yeah, where do they land on the happiness scale?
Well, unmarried men, both with and without children, were significantly less likely to report being very happy.
So we're seeing a pattern here.
A pattern indeed. For both men and women, marriage seems to be a strong predictor of reported happiness.
Yeah.
But why? What is it about marriage?
That's the million-dollar question.
Is it just about having a partner? Or is there something more?
I think it's a combination of things, right?
Okay.
Having a partner can provide companionship, emotional support, a sense of shared purpose.
Right.
And those things are really powerful when it comes to navigating life, The ups and downs, the good times and the bad.
I hear you. But let's not forget, marriage isn't always easy.
Oh, absolutely not.
There are challenges, conflicts.
Compromises.
So how do we square that with this data saying married people are happier?
Well, and this is key. I think even the happiest marriages take work, right?
Yeah.
Communication, a willingness to work through the tough stuff.
Of course.
But what this research suggests is that for many people, the benefits of marriage outweigh those challenges.
Interesting. So the love, the support, the stability, it's worth it.
It seems to be for a lot of people.
It really does kind of flip the script on how we often hear about marriage.
It does. It challenges those assumptions.
Yeah, like this restrictive, burdensome institution.
Yeah, and instead it's like, hey, maybe it actually fulfills some deep social and emotional needs.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
It's a different way of looking at it.
It is. This is so fascinating, but I feel like we're just getting started.
We are.
There's so much more to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked a lot about marriage, but what about parenthood?
Right, big one.
Does having kids actually make people happier?
Or is that just a myth?
And how do things like socioeconomic status,
Cultural background.
play into all this?
All great questions,
Right.
and ones we'll definitely delve into as we continue our deep dive.
I'm excited.
Me too. We'll explore all those complexities of parenthood,
Awesome.
the influence of all those social and economic factors you mentioned, and even challenge the idea that there's just one definition of happiness.
Oh, love it. It's going to be good.
Okay, but before we go too far, I have a question.
Yeah.
What about the folks who, aren't married or don't have kids?
Right.
Does this research mean they're going to be unhappy?
That's such a good point. And like we said before, statistics paint this broad picture.
Yeah.
Individual experiences are going to be different.
Totally.
Plenty of people thrive without marriage or kids.
For sure.
It's not like this magic formula, you
Right.
know.
Exactly.
Get married, have children, instant happiness.
Check the boxes and you're good.
Right. Definitely more nuanced than that.
Okay, so this data gives us these trends,
Yeah.
but it's not telling everyone what they should do.
Exactly. It's not a prescription for life.
So then what is it? What are we supposed to take away from it?
I think it's about understanding why those things might correlate with happiness for some people.
Okay.
It could be those stable relationships, sense of belonging, shared goals.
Right, we talked about
And those things you can find in other ways.
outside of marriage and family. Exactly. Think about close friendships, strong communities,
Yeah.
even mentorships.
So it's really about those fulfilling connections, however they look.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But even within those happy marriages and families,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are challenges.
Oh, of course.
No one's life is perfect 24/7.
No, not at all.
So how does that fit in?
Well, one thought is that these committed relationships give people a reason to work through those tough times.
Okay.
Whether it's with a partner or children,
Mm-hmm.
there's this shared responsibility and purpose that can be really motivating.
Interesting. So it's less about feeling good all the time and more about
Yeah.
having that support to face the challenges.
Exactly. Weather the storms together.
I see that. But I'm also thinking about this.
Yeah.
This study relies on people self-reporting their happiness.
Right.
Is that always accurate?
Ooh, that's a great point. Self-reported data always has limitations.
For sure.
Think about it, how we describe our happiness. It's influenced by so many things. Cultural norms, personal expectation.
Even just your mood that day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's valuable information, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
Right. Someone could report lower happiness but still have a super meaningful life.
Exactly. Maybe through their work or creative passions or volunteering.
So many ways to find meaning.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not just about getting married and having kids then.
No, it's not about checking those boxes.
It's about figuring out what brings you joy and purpose.
You got it.
However that looks for you.
Exactly. And it might look different for everyone.
Right.
Maybe for some people, it is that traditional family life. For others, it's travel adventure.
Or dedicating yourself to a cause.
Right. There's no one right answer.
This ties back to what we were saying before.
Yeah.
Challenging those assumptions about happiness.
I love it. It really is a personal journey.
It is.
And understanding how happiness works, psychology of it, that can give us tools to navigate that journey better.
So knowing that marriage and parenthood do correlate with happiness for some, does that change how we should approach those decisions?
I don't think it should dictate our choices, but it's good information to have.
Yeah.
If you deeply want marriage and family, this suggests those desires might be rooted in something important.
Okay.
Something fundamental to well-being.
But on the flip side,
Yeah.
if that's not your path, that's totally fine too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The key is to be intentional
Okay.
about your choices and understand how they might impact your happiness.
I love that. This has been so insightful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like we've really unpacked some of this.
We've covered a lot, yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Ooh, okay.
We've talked a lot about those external factors.
Marriage, parenthood, those social connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what about our own mindsets, our attitudes?
Ooh, great question. That's a whole other layer to this.
Right.
Our thoughts, our beliefs, how we interpret our experiences.
They all play a role.
Huge role. It's not just what happens to us, but how we react to it.
So even if you're not married with 2.5 kids and a white picket fence,
Right.
you can still cultivate happiness.
Absolutely. Through things like mindfulness, gratitude.
Focusing on the good.
Exactly. And there's a ton of research on positive psychology.
Yeah.
And how to train our minds for more joy and resilience.
That's definitely something we should explore more in the future.
Oh, yeah. A whole other episode right there.
Totally. But for now, I think we've given everyone a lot to consider.
Definitely.
I've covered so much
ground. Yeah.
exploring all these different dimensions of happiness.
The social and the personal.
Exactly. So hopefully our listeners feel empowered
Yes.
to keep exploring this topic.
And figure out what happiness means for them.
Because there's no one right answer.
Not at all. The most important thing is to live a life that feels authentic and meaningful to you.
I love that. So well said.
Thank you.
And if this conversation piqued your interest, check out the show notes for links to the research we talked about.
And some other resources on happiness.
Yes. And if you have any thoughts you want to share, hit us up on social media.
We love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep seeking out those moments of joy. It's funny, Ray, we talk about happiness like it's this thing you chase.
Yeah.
This thing you're always trying to find.
Look, it's out there somewhere.
Exactly. But maybe it's not about chasing it all.
Interesting.
Maybe it's more about cultivating it.
Oh, I like that.
Nurturing those things in your life that bring joy and meaning.
Yeah. Creating the right conditions for it to grow.
Right. And it makes me think about
Yeah.
all those societal pressures and expectations.
Oh, sure.
Like how much of our happiness is influenced by what we think we should be happy about.
That's a big one. Like those picture-perfect families on Instagram.
Yes. Or the idea that you need to hit certain milestones by a certain age to be successful.
It's like there's this script, right?
Yeah. And if your life doesn't match it.
Then you're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
But real happiness, I think, it comes from a much deeper place.
Okay, so then how do we break free from those expectations?
It's tough, but I think it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Really taking the time to figure out what brings you joy, what gives you purpose, what values are important to you.
So tuning out all that outside noise.
Yes, and listening to your own inner voice.
So it's about defining success and fulfillment for yourself.
Exactly. Not letting society define it for you.
And maybe that means choosing a path that's less traditional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to remember that happiness isn't constant.
Right. Life has its ups and downs.
For sure. It's not about avoiding the negative. It's about learning to handle it.
Having that resilience.
Yes, and finding meaning even when things are tough.
Okay, I like that perspective a lot. It's about embracing all of it.
Exactly. The good, the bad, all of it.
And maybe finding happiness in the simple things, too.
Yes. Those everyday moments, the connections, the beauty around us.
Just appreciating those small things.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into happiness, I want to leave everyone with a challenge.
Okay, I'm listening.
Take some time this week to think about your own definition of happiness.
Look,
what brings you joy? What gives your life meaning?
great questions.
And how can you bring more of those things into your daily life?
So good. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's a process of growth, of self-discovery.
It's ongoing.
It is. So be patient with yourself and never stop seeking out those moments of joy.
Beautifully said. This has been such a great conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too.
We could probably talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But for now, we'll leave it there. To our amazing listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little inspiring.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, keep those minds curious and keep seeking those moments of joy.